Hello everyone, hello, lovely to see you all and wonderful to have Laurie here this evening. It's going to be a bit like This Is Your Life because I feel like half the audience actually know Laurie, so this is going to be an interesting experience. So anyway, I was just going to start by asking how you define your role of creative producer. That's my first question.
Creative
what is
producer.
It?
Well, firstly, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it coming out the speakers?
Yes.
Ah, very good. Creative producer. Well, I'm a gun for hire, and I'm sort of hired by companies to effectively, once they give me the script, they ask me how do I make this work, and I have to come up with solutions and ideas as to the thinking to how this is going to actually get onto the screen.
Okay.
So my job really is as a sort of very kind of call me creative, I have to say, but it's more of a logistical, creative, having to come up, as I say, with a plan that then I have to then convey to the director and to the financiers and say, this is how we can do this. And generally the financier will always say, well, can we do it for less? And the director will always say, can we do it for more? So then I have to kind of find the balance between what is written and what is required, and actually where the budget actually sits. And it's all about money. I think the whole thing of filmmaking, television, I call it filmmaking, it's money. It's all driven by the dollar and the pound.
Can we roll back the clock and go back to the 70s and just talk about how you first got into the industry? Back to the 70s. Back to the 70s. So late 70s. The late 70s. Late 70s. Late 70s.
Late 70s, yeah. I went to art school for a year or two. I can't remember if it's a year or two. My wife would be able to tell me, but she wasn't there. It was 2 years. Okay. So I went to 2 years through foundation at art school.
This is Epsom.
Epsom Art School. Yeah. And I was a punk, not literally a punk, but I sort of dabbled in it. Then I became a new romantic because I liked wearing frilly shirts and makeup and all that sort of stuff. But actually ended up being much more sort of zoot suit and all the various, and actually kind of loved the creative freedom that the foundation course gave me at art school. Not a clue what I wanted to do. I just loved being with my mates and painting and whatever. And then I got offered a place at Brighton to do fine art. I don't know why, because my painting wasn't great, but I don't know. They offered me a place. I decided not to go for various reasons, and I went off for 6 months, 7, 8 months around Europe with a very lovely young girlfriend, and had a great time. It was brilliant. I had a fantastic time in Europe. But I came back, and my mates had all gone off to do degrees and the rest of it, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a job, and this is 1979.
So it was a pretty grim time.
It was pretty grim, and I didn't, and again, as a young kid, I was 17, 18, I didn't know what was going on really in my world. And I was living with my grandparents down in Wandsworth, and I got a job in a pub in Grenville Road, which is still there, called the Gardener's Arms. And I was there one night pulling pints, and my dad was, this is a very long story, but I'll get to the point in a minute. My dad was running casinos in Soho, so he's running sounds a bit weird. Running casinos. He used to dress up as a cowboy. It was bizarre. Charlie Chester's. Anyway, and he ran these casinos, but there was this pulling the pints, and then this guy came in, hobbling to the bar, like this. And he sat down, and he had one leg, and he sat there at the bar with one leg, and he said, do you want a job? And I said, what? He said, well, do you want a job? I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm doing a film that shoots for 2 or 3 weeks, starts tomorrow. Do you want to be on it? You can come to the set and you be the T-boy. And I was, really? Oh, okay. I said, so how does that work? He said, well, he said, I know your dad. I said, oh, okay. He said, yeah, I know your dad. And it was a bit like, I had no idea what he was talking about, except he said, be there tomorrow, 6:30 at Hyde Park Corner. And that was it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went home, I had no idea what I was meant to be doing. November, freezing cold. Got up there, I remember my granddad's big coat, because I had no coat. I was, we were wearing Harrington jackets and all the rest of it. And got up there, and the first thing I was told was, okay, there's the kettle, there's the cups, there's the tea bags, make tea. Oh, okay. So that was it. And I was told to go make tea for all the crew. So I'd go up there, and I was a skinny little thing, I'm not a man. Skinny little thing, handing out tea, and I just loved it. And I absolutely, not loving giving the tea, but I loved the fact thing that suddenly the cameras came out and all this stuff started to happen. I thought, this is great. Shall I tell the other story about the producers and the...
You can tell that story. You can tell that story, yeah.
So this is then what goes on to the next level of, that's tea, give out tea to everybody. Roll on a couple of weeks. I was then in the production office, in the Hilton Hotel. And I'm sitting there, and we said Gestetner. It was these things, kids don't know what it is. It's this thing like a photocopier, but it was a wind-up thing. Chucking all this stuff. And there was 2 American producers behind me.
Because it was an American show you've been on?
Yes, it was an American show called The Tourist, yeah.
Mm.
And it was some lady called Hershey or something was in it. It was a load of rubbish, quite honestly. But it was a pilot, and I didn't know anything more. But I was sitting there doing this stuff, and these 2 American producers were behind me, and they started having a huge argument. And it was an argument about who was going to pay for the prostitutes that they were having in the Hilton Hotel, because the bill was so big. And I'm sorry, I know, but this is the truth. I was stunned, and I sat there thinking, prostitutes? What's all that about? Well, really? Who's going to pay the bill? How much was the bill? It was tens of thousands. They were arguing about who was going to pay the bill. I thought, this is great. What is this idea? I honestly thought, this is just mad. And it sort of got me into this. I thought, well, I did my 2 or 3 weeks. And John Oldknow, who had actually production managed Carry On films, poor guy. I mean, he did have one leg and he was hobbling around. But I got to meet the ADs, and the ADs, they said, look, come on to another film with us. I didn't know anybody.
Because the next one was Cry Wolf, wasn't it?
It was short, yeah.
Which was in the cinemas with Airplane. It was the little feature.
That's right. Yeah. You said, I mean, I'm amazed.
So this is 1980.
This is 1980.
Yeah.
And they said, the AD said, look, come with us and be a runner and come and make tea for us there. Okay. So I went on that for 2 weeks, and the DP was Bob Krasker, who had DP'd Lit The Third Man,
yeah.
Who was delightful. He kept saying, Laurie, cup of tea, please. All right, Bob. I didn't know who he was. It was this old guy. Give him his cup of tea.
Mind you, it was the last thing he ever did, so I hope that wasn't because of your tea.
Well, I know that he died.
He died, yeah. He died very shortly afterwards.
But I remember, and this is vivid, I remember doing that, and I just love the whole thing of cameras. I mean, I just love this, what was going on in front of me. And I remember the prop men at the end of that short said, do you want to take some plants home? There were all these plants. I said, yeah, you can take me on my nan and granddad would love them. So I went home with these 2 carrier bags. I have no idea how I got there. I had no car. I think I just got the bus or something. And I got home and I gave them to my nan and granddad, and I burst into tears. And I just sat there and I said, this is what I want to do. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how I'm supposed to move on and get the next job, because the ADs said, look, you've got to be a union member.
Yeah, of course.
And it was all unionised, and you had to have a ticket, a union ticket. And so through my tears, I sort of course my granddad said, grow up, be a man. I was like, yes, oh, blah, blah, blah. I thought, well, what do I do? So then I thought I would go off and get into commercials.
So this is where you work with Bob Mahoney Associates?
Yes.
So Bob Mahoney Associates, that's They did Schweppes, didn't they? Schweppes.
They did the Schweppes ad.
Schwepping.
Schwepping. Because I just knocked on doors all around Soho, because Soho at that point in London was just full of film companies. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And it was film cans everywhere, and it was just this sort of very wonderful kind of, and it's very romantic, I have to say. You kind of think, it's such a great business to be in, but when you're trying to get a job, it was so difficult. But I got this job, and I was a runner for 2 or 3 years with Bob.
Well, yes, because then through that, you then meet...
Well, then upstairs in the offices was a young... My poor wife is in there. Girls I keep bringing up. Was this lady called Debbie. And so Debbie said, "Oh, come around my house and meet my dad." I didn't know who he was. I had no idea, really. I mean, I just had a great job running around Soho, getting sandwiches for people, making tea. And it was David Putnam. And David, her dad, and David Putnam had produced Chariots of Fire. He just won the Oscars.
So he was seen as the last great hope of the British film industry.
Yes, he was. And I was like amazed that there was Debbie. She then said, "Look, a year or so later, my dad is looking for an assistant. Do you want to go and work for him?" I said, "Yeah." So I met him. He was delightful. And I left that world of commercials, the Schweppes and all the rest of it, because I didn't really like advertising. I mean, I was also doing, at that point, doing a lot of video stuff. A lot of mates who'd become really well-known video pop Vaughan Arnell in particular, who did Robbie Williams, and there's a lot of those guys that I kind of knew, but I just didn't like the idea of doing stuff like that.
So what were you doing for David? What sort of...
Well, then I went to David, and I remember going
tea.
first day. Well, first day I went all dressed up in a tie and a jacket. Got into the offices in South Ken. He had a great set of offices. Great. I mean, he was very successful. Yeah. He said, my guy went, he said, "See that car?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wash it." What? I said, "Yeah, wash my car." And literally, I washed his car.
In your tie. In
my tie. And then I learnt to, I had to learn to project 35mm. Then I became his project. I mean, basically, I just was his dog's body. I mean, I met so many amazing people. I met Paul McCartney, and I met Eliza, what's her name? The lady from Spielberg, all that, Frank Marshall, all that lot.
Because he's married to obviously Kathleen Kennedy. She's
that's
obviously now
right.
president of Lucasfilm.
Yeah, well, I met her. I didn't know who these people were.
And Frank started Amblin Entertainment with Spielberg, didn't he?
I didn't know who they were.
Wow.
They were just sitting there. I was so nervous doing the projection. I was like that, shaking. Because I knew if I screwed up, David would just go ballistic. And, you know, you'd have to get the frame, and it was 12 frames up, whatever. I hated it. I'm just not that kind of
So
person.
how long did you last for with David?
Well, about 3 years or so. And then he was going off to do The Mission.
Oh, wow.
Because I joined him when he'd doing The Killing Fields.
Which is 84, right, yeah.
He was just coming out of that, and then he was going to do The Mission in South America. Yeah. And he wasn't going to take me, and I said, "Listen, David, I really... I don't want to be sitting here when you're out there," which was a mistake. First mistake I actually made, well, one of many. Because if I'd have stayed with him, I'm sure I would have got out there and my life would have been a little bit different. Yeah. But I was so impatient. I said, no, I want to go and learn film. I mean, I was learning stuff with David, but it wasn't. I was meeting great people. And I think what I realise now, of course, I was meeting so many people. Yeah. I mean, I met tremendous writers and directors and who I didn't really know at the time. Yeah. But 50 years on, I kind of 40 years on.
So what did you say to David then? So what did
I just said, "Listen, I don't want to do it anymore. Can I get?" Well, he said to me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "A location sounds like a cool job." So he got me on a job as a location assistant.
Mona Lisa?
No, this was a thing called Mr. Love.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because he had lots of films that he was producing at that time. And I went into that, and then from there I got into location management full time, and I went off to do Mona Lisa. I met up with Neil Jordan and Steve Woolley, and
which is a brilliant film with Bob Hoskins and Michael Caine.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant film to make. I mean, Neil at that point was kind of becoming one of the top directors in the world.
Yeah,
And
So how did you? So were you going around Soho for location?
yeah, I was going around.
Shooting. Yeah.
I was going. Yeah, we went around. So he sat with me in my little Renault 4. It was my Renault 4. Sure. My one. And we were just rambling around looking for locations that were. Again, it was all in Soho. It was all because it was about the sex industry. But we knew we couldn't film in Soho per se. We had to do a lot of build, which we did down in Rotherhithe in an old hospital. But it was wonderful to be creative with Neil and with Jamie Leonard, the designer. We just ended up creating this wonderful world that I don't think you can do now, actually. A lot of it's all gone. All that stuff that was in King's Cross and all that area that we created does not exist. The hospital that we filmed in, Rotherhithe, is now a big housing estate.
Wow.
I mean, in the 80s, it was a very different world of location filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And Soho in those days, I mean, it's very sort of gangster, really. Well, I mean, it was the Maltese.
Maltese, yeah. It was the Maltese ran Soho in the 80s.
Yeah.
And we got hooked up, Neil and I, we got hooked up to meet like the main guy who ran Soho. We got hooked up, and literally he was a big fat guy. I mean, he was huge. And he sat there in his little, it was up in Windmill Street, somewhere around there. And on the back, on the TV, he had a video player of a boxing match.
Yeah.
And we walked in and we felt like little boys. And he sort of said, "You're not shooting in Soho. You're not coming in here doing what you're doing." Because Neil's Irish, I'm really sorry, I'm so sorry. Because Neil was scared, and I was like, "No, don't worry about it. My dad's around the corner in casinos," and they knew my dad. So they were kind of, okay, well, we kind of know that. But then when we said, "Well, it's a film with Bob Hoskins," the guy went, "What? Bob Hoskins?" Right, big fat guy. "Well, that's okay. You can, Bob Hoskins, we can do anything because it's Long Good Friday.
Of course.
You can do whatever you want in Soho, but just don't go to this sort of streets."
Wow.
They're very clear. We couldn't go into certain specific places.
Yeah.
But if you wanted any help, we're here to help. We'll give you the help.
Wow.
So it was really kind of, that was an amazing experience. But from there, I went on to do 4 or 5 other feature films. I can't remember what they were, to be honest.
Well, the last
You
one you did,
probably know.
I mean, with the location
more
manager,
than I
you said
do.
Queen of Hearts is the sort of
Queen
the
of
stopping
Hearts.
point where you've sort of had enough.
When I collapsed.
And you collapsed, yeah.
I did. I collapsed. I was doing Queen of Hearts again in Rotherhithe, because that kind of was like the place in southeast London where it was cheap and you could do anything pretty much.
Yeah.
It was like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And there was no health and safety. Nobody cared about anything. You did what you want. But I had been an assistant, and I remember reversing I was parking up cars for some reason. I don't know why I was doing that. Parking this rigger, "Come on, Jim, come on, Jim, come on, Jim," and I collapsed in a heap. And I remember waking up and being told, go home. And 2 days in bed, I was exhausted. And I was young, I was like 27 or something, and I don't want to do this anymore.
So this leads on to your next phase, and it's On the Wire is what you do after that, isn't it?
So yeah, actually it was 1980, it was when Arsenal beat Liverpool I remember, they won the Premiership or something. I can remember that. I'm not an Arsenal fan, I'm Chelsea, but I remember that.
I think this is 89, I'm not a football fan at all, but I think it's 89.
It's 89.
89.
Because I remember packing my bags and watching that going, "Oh, rubbish, isn't it? Arsenal rubbish."
Yeah.
But I then did this film, which is for the National Film School, with a lady called Elaine Proctor.
And this is On the Wire.
On the Wire, which was an anti-apartheid film, which was absolutely an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And we made a feature out of very little. And we were out in Zimbabwe, and things were going on with the ANC, which I wasn't really involved with. I'm so naive. I have no idea. People were turning up their guns and, "Oh, hello, all right, all right." I don't know. And I was told to leave houses because they were having a meeting, because Elaine was very proactive, South African director. She said, "Laurie, you have to go now." "Oh, all right then." Not really understanding, but we made this amazing film, which was picked up at London Film Festival. And again, sort of mistake number 2 is that I didn't then go on to progress with that, because I think it's lack of confidence. I just didn't feel I could do what I've been doing.
Mind you, it's lovely when you keep talking about mistakes, and here we are with this sort of Emmy and a BAFTA
I
behind
know,
us, which is...
I know.
But I know, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I suppose...
I might touch this one as well.
Yeah. I think it's more about... I suppose that people see filmmakers as like very wealthy, and some of them are. I mean, it's not a great life, it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
But I always thought, I have to say, I always thought I would... And this is why this is amazing. This is a different... I took a different route, which we'll explain.
Yeah.
I always thought I would go and get an Oscar. I thought, I win an Oscar. Which I think is so... It's well, there's a huge ego sitting, you know, everyone's got an ego, but I think filmmakers have egos that are quite big, and that's from literally from the actors to the director to producers to film crew. They all want to do something rather amazing and be seen and be applauded for their work.
Of course.
I think everybody does,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So, but I think especially in film and television.
That's understandable. We'll move on a little bit. So,
Yes.
after On the Wire, where again you get some amazing experiences and
Commitments. Yeah.
the Commitments with Alan Parker, of course, which apparently is the most enjoyable shoot he's ever had. Actually, it's the film he's enjoyed the most.
Is it?
Like, apparently, allegedly, from what I've read. I mean, you'd
So
know.
Alan says.
So tell me about that. Again, another invaluable experience, I presume, on the Commitments.
So the Commitments was 19...
And this is 1990.
1999, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd done a film with a producer called Roger Randall Cutler,
Oh yeah.
who's delightful. And Roger said, look, come and production manage. I was location manager on that first film with him. Yeah, I'll come and do that. So I went out to Dublin, and Alan is really tough. Alan had just done, he'd done Midnight Express.
Yes, of course.
But he'd just done a film about a divorced family in America, which is basically with Albert Finney, Shoot the Moon, I think it was.
Yeah.
Not great.
Right, yeah.
And he was in a real mess, his head, because he'd left his wife, and it was all a bit, he was tricky, Alan. Alan was tricky. It was the first time I'd come across a very difficult director. So Alan is quite a big, grumpy geezer, you know, a bit like me now, I guess. I get it now. And he fired the producers and kept me on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he fired Roger and Linda because he said, oh, they're just in my way. I'm going to do it my way. And we had $10 million, but we had to create the world of... Anybody seen The Commitments? You know The Commitments. I mean, it's a musical, but it was so ahead of its time with the way that we recorded the music and pre-record, had it on playback. We had massive... Because nothing was digital. We didn't have internet or anything. It was all done with huge, big machines that would come in, play back, and do it live. And Alan was very clear, I have to do it live. I mean, the budget just exploded. I wasn't me, I was just production managing and just signing bits of paper. I had an amazing time. It was an amazing time. It's an amazing film.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is.
But I did that, and then what did I do?
Well, I mean, the trouble is, we could do a 3-hour interview because after this, you then do the Comic Strip Presents, which I love.
Yes.
And that's another very tricky individual you work with
Peter.
there. Yeah,
Richardson.
Peter Richardson.
Yeah, so I did. That's right. I did The Commitments.
You did 5 episodes.
I did. Well, then I did more actually. I did more with Peter, but a lot of it was because Peter Richardson and that whole comic strip, the Rick Mail and
Jennifer Saunders.
Jennifer
Adrian
Saunders.
Davidson.
Yeah, and it was all incredibly wonderful. It was very liberating.
Yeah.
They all. Well, not all of them actually. Peter was slightly. I'm very careful.
You're trying to be very diplomatic here.
Yeah, I love Peter.
Yeah.
But he was mad. But he was always sitting there with a little. Oh, Laurie, I think I'm going to do it like this. And Peter, it won't work like that. Oh, why not? Well, Peter, and we get onto the floor, and he would be absolutely couldn't figure it out. So we'd all have to kind of Peter. We'd do it like this. Oh, okay, all right. Okay, that sounds good. And he'd keep doing this. He'd keep doing that. You know, what are you doing? Well, that's good, isn't it? No, we can't do that, Peter. It was constant. So Peter, I just had this relationship. I used to AD for him. I wasn't an AD, but I could deal with him. And what I've realised, I can deal with quite difficult people and difficult directors in particular.
Because you have been called the director's whisper, haven't you? Which is a lovely little term.
Yeah,
Like this ability.
This ability to deal with tricky people and to understand what they want and then tell and then convey it in a way of, oh, okay, so let's try like this. Okay, that's great. And ultimately, I think with Peter, I think what was great about that period of my life was being allowed to sort of try new things and to be creative and to create things with really creative people who kind of were just having a good time and enjoyed and would all talk to each other. There was no barriers. Nobody felt they couldn't. Like Alan Parker was great, but Alan was in charge. It was tricky. Comic strip was complete reverse. I mean, anybody, you could just walk around in your underpants. Nobody cared what you did.
So again, you learned a huge amount then from that experience.
I did. My underpants.
Your underpants. We're going to have to try. So you go into co-producing as well, and which is interesting.
Well, I went to Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah, we need to talk about Sense and Sensibility, don't we? With Ang Lee.
So actually, after I did. Is this boring, by the way?
No.
Oh, good. Sorry, I'm going to walk on forever. My poor wife is sitting at it all before. No, after I did Comic Strip, I then
Funny Bones.
Funny Bones, that's right. Which was a wonderful film.
But it had a nightmare with its distribution, didn't it? It didn't do very well.
No, because it was a Disney film, and Disney were taken over by, I can't remember. Oh no, the management got changed. So whenever that happens with any management, that they will just get rid of the old stuff, put it on the back burner, because they want the new stuff that they have developed. Yeah. So Funny Bones was a wonderful film with Jerry Lewis and Lee Evans.
Yeah, it was an amazing cast.
It was wonderful. I mean, I love Jerry Lewis. Just quick. So I tell you that he turns up in Blackpool. So he came to Blackpool and he came with his wife and his kid. He was like 70, and this little kid. It was like a baby. Oh, that's your grandson? No, it's my son. Oh, okay, Joe. I was like, I knew him from The Mad Professor.
Yeah, well, what a film.
I didn't really know much more about him, but Blackpool was where he and Dean Martin used to go and play all the time. So we get into his huge suite, massive suite in Blackpool. Well, Blackpool doesn't have great hotels, but got a big suite. He said, come on, I want to go for a ride with you. So I got in, he's got his chauffeur, me in the back with him. He said, I want to take you around Blackpool. What do you mean take me around? I said, I know Blackpool. And we went for a long drive, and he said, this is where I played with Dean here. I went there with Dean, I went there with Dean. Dean who? Dean mine. You and Dean? Unbelievable. The weirdest thing was, he bought four suitcases, two of which were full of brand new white ankle socks. And he showed me them. He said, do you like this? I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, I wear one pair a day and I throw them away. Yeah. I swear to God, I was like, wow. Don't throw them away, I'll have them. I said, no. He wears, that's his big thing. And then he said to me, as I was leaving that day, he said, and I want you to change all the locks in the whole of my suite. All the locks changed. Why? He said, because people are going to come and kidnap my kid.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there was that. That's the other side of him.
So he was very, very paranoid.
He was very paranoid. Right. But anyway, that was a great film. But I kind of got myself into a bit of a. I was tired.
Yeah.
I felt I needed a bit of a break. So I went off for a few months and did some travelling and the rest of it, and ended up going to New York, and I met up with James Seamus, who called me to say, listen, I'm doing this film.
It's a Sense and Sensibility.
With Ang Lee,
wow.
Who I'd seen his films. I was a big avid cinema guy. I mean, Ang Lee had just done Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, which I loved. And I was saying, we used to go to Chelsea, Michelle and I used to go to the Curzon in Chelsea and just really devour film in those days, because they weren't so much as DVDs and downloads and the rest of it. And I knew who Ang was. Well, that's kind of interesting. Went to meet James, who was a very big producer. Hadn't done a huge amount. James said, look, I want you to do it with me. Let's do it together. Okay. So I did my tour, got back, I made Sensibility.
And this is Ang Lee's first Hollywood film, wasn't it?
This is Ang's first, English-speaking Hollywood film.
Wow. And Emma Thompson's first screenplay.
Emma's first screenplay.
Which was brilliant.
Brilliant. I mean, at that time, 95, Hugh Grant was the biggest star in the world.
Yeah.
We had Laurie, Hugh Grant, Emma Thompson, Kate Winslet, who lives up the road. Yeah. And, you know, we made this film for $14 million, which was like, and I remember Sony coming to see me, the guy who ran Sony at the time, and said, you know what, you get no more money out of us, you've got to make it for $14 million because we don't believe in this. Yeah. We don't believe that this is going to be very good. Literally, that's what he said to me. Delightful bloke. But he said, you get no more. Oh, okay. And we made this film from Devon in the south, like a road movie, all the way back up to London. And I tell you what, at the end of that shoot, we all burst into tears. It was an extraordinary, because I think we all felt we've done something quite, I mean, it was the first time I literally sat with a bunch of people, filmmakers, and felt this is amazing, and not knowing what was going to come out at the end.
And it did so well, obviously.
Well,
Jane Austen mania, wasn't it, after that?
But actually, it was the most beautiful film to make, and the most beautiful people. But I think third mistake I made in my career was not using that to go further forward. I sort of got stuck in a bit of a I want to go to America, and I ended up going to New York to make a film, which was terrible.
Which one was that?
A Further Gesture.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but I wanted to have a good time. Okay. I was more into that rather than developing my
because I'm interested. Then you move into TV, and I'm interested why is that switch?
Well, I did, having done a few other rather sort of not such good films as I ended up with Steve Woolley and Liz Carson. I ended up making some great films with them. Good British independent films that weren't big budget, but you know were good, and you know some I can say I'm proud of. Some I just think not great. But I ended up doing a film, Little Voice, which is probably the best of the films that I made with
Jane Horrocks.
With Jane Horrocks and Michael Caine. So I did Little Voice, and I got a call from a guy called Stanley Jaffe. Stanley Jaffe was this little podgy 70-year-old guy that used to run Paramount, and he was the guy that greenlit The Godfather in the 70s, and he was and had developed, although he bought the rights actually to The Four Feathers, which was a big film from the 1930s, Corder. So Stanley said, you know, I'm going to make this film, you know, I want you to come and do it with me. Okay. So Stanley said, it's for Paramount, you know what, and we're going to make $35 million, all right? I said, oh, okay. And I'd never done anything like that before. So we started budgeting, and the budget was at $50 million. And I remember I had to call him up. We were in Hammersmith in this thing called The Ark. I had the production manager, Roberto, and myself. And the one thing, the way that I work is on an even level. He was producing with me. I don't care about names at this point. I do want to get these, but not when I'm working. We're a team. So I remember we pressed the button. We had this speakerphone in the middle of the table, a huge room like this. It was this one table, me and him, and we did have computers in 2000. It was 2000. Stanley, yeah, what's up? So, well, Stanley, the budget's at 55 million, and he went very quiet. Dollars. You think I'm a putz? You think I'm a putz? What the fuck? What? He's just shouting at us through the squawk box. I was in hysterics. Roberto, he was just, we were just laughing at this guy. What are you? And he could hear us giggling. Are you giggling at? You laughing at? No, Stanley, no. Well, you got to bring it down. You got to bring it down to 35 million. Well, Stanley, that ain't going to happen. No. That film ended up at 75 million.
Whoa. So
because it was a nightmare. Yeah. And it was the first film that I'd done for a studio. It was Paramount. Paramount did not like the director, Shekhar Kapoor. Stanley worked for Paramount. Stanley thought he could play them. They weren't interested. Right. Shaker thought he could play that. It was my first time I got involved in politics. And I have to say it was a huge lesson for me because I'd never been involved in that stuff.
Yeah.
I've always been, oh, isn't it great, make films, isn't it lovely, yeah, great friend, big hugs and kisses and fine. Suddenly get into a world of American, production.
It was unpleasant.
Oh man, it was horrendous. And they fired, Stanley got fired, and his son got fired. Weinstein, Harvey took over. And I went to Seattle, I went to see Harvey.
Pantomime boo almost at that
So,
point.
my story about Harvey, so I go in to see Harvey with Shaker, and we had to wait outside his Savoy suite, a massive suite in the Savoy. And, you have to wait for him. And then you get called in, and it was me and Shaker, I can't remember, somebody else was with me. And we sat down, and Harvey's in a vest, and not in underpants, he's wearing trousers. He's got a cigarette, got his whiskey. All right, boys, all right. We're going to make a great film. This is going to be a fucking great film. Shaker, you're a genius, Shaker. I'm like going, okay, fine. And you just felt like this is going to be a mess. And it was a mess. And they took over the shoot. Everything, producers got fired, they kept me on, which was a mistake because I should have left. I learned that lesson. Fourth point, you fire the producers, you go.
Yeah.
You stay on, I'm the fall guy. I became the fall guy.
Yeah.
I was the one who got blamed for everything. What it wasn't doing me. So when I came out of that, I vowed I wouldn't work. Well, in fact, it kept me away from America for quite a while.
Which is interesting because obviously you've ended up back there in many ways with sort of the Netflix HBO connection. But
We're going to talk about the BAFTA, which you obviously win for your TV work with Occupation, which is obviously a BBC One drama with James Nesbitt. So tell me about that.
And
how did you get involved with that?
Well, I think what happened, I remember vaguely, was with feature film. I was getting tired of co-producing and being a creative and not being allowed to be creative, being told just to work the figures out, and it's just boring. I found it boring. Although I was making film, I didn't want to be the guy that was telling everybody, you have to kind of, you can't spend the money. And I thought, oh, I'll do that. So I then got a call to go and do this TV movie called Occupation. And I read the script, and it was the first time that I realised, I thought, I can read scripts. I can make things happen. I know how to do that. And when I read the script, I thought, this is wonderful. This is an amazing piece of writing. And we made Occupation for, I think it was like £3-4 million.
Wow.
It wasn't a lot of, maybe I lied, maybe it was 5, I can't remember.
It's not a lot.
It wasn't a lot of money, but we did it in Morocco, we created Basra, Iraq, we created a world in it was all shot in Belfast and for tax reasons, and I began to understand how I can do this, I can make this work. Again, when we made Occupation, we didn't know it was going to win. I mean, I remember going to the ceremony and we thought Red Riding was going to win. So when we won it, it was such a shock.
Was it your choice of director as well?
Yeah, I got Nick.
Okay.
I got Nick Murphy in with Derek Wax, the exec.
Wow.
So it was a huge, wow, I love this.
Yeah.
I then went back, and that was 2007, 8 or something like that.
2008.
Yeah. I then went back into film making, I think. I can't remember to be honest what I did. Oh, I did How to Lose Friends, and then I did then I did Made in Dagenham.
Yeah.
And they were fine. I mean, I love those films, but I had a great time. But they weren't. I didn't feel achieved. Actually, I tell you then. Actually, what happened? I did Mrs. Henderson Presents. Oh, this is the 5th mistake. So I did Mrs. Henderson Presents. I know, that's right. I made 2 or 3 films that were horrendous to make. Financially, there was no money. I had no cash flow. I was making films with people who are liars, put it that way. I believed that I made a film called Asylum with Natasha Richardson.
Oh yeah, yes.
So Natasha was producing with me, and we went in to make this film with a guy called, there's a company, there were 7 Arts, who were not giving us the money. And we were making this film with Ian McKellen, what's his name? What's the geezer off Downton Abbey? Hugh Bonneville.
Oh yeah.
And who was the other chap? Some other chap. And Natasha.
Yeah.
And we were just making this film, and it was just horrendous. And we got to Dublin, had to go to Dublin to get more money, financial tax money. And then I stopped the film because I said, there is no cash, I can't pay you.
Okay.
So I was doing these 2 or 3 films like that were so stressful, and I knew what the problem was, but I didn't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And then I got offered to do Mrs. Henderson Presents with Stephen Frears, and I shouldn't have done it. I did it because I was Stephen Frears, I'll do that.
Of course.
But I basically got caught out and was made the bad boy, was the whipping boy, by the producers and the bond company, because we have bond companies who are completion bond, who are insurers, that make sure you don't spend any more than what's in the budget.
So another painful experience. In that
Yeah, so I left.
Right.
Well, I got fired basically. At that point, I think I took out 18 months.
Yeah.
I didn't earn any money, and it was a bit of a disaster. My dear wife and child, they kind of understood, I think, because I had to get myself into a place where I wanted to be,
Yeah, of course.
not where everybody else wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And I think I realised I was too nice,
Yeah.
which I've always been too nice, and just too compliant. And I wasn't fighting back enough. And I think when it got to this, to make this sort of thing, I thought, this is great.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah.
So then what happened was after Mrs. Henderson was a bit of a disaster, I got back, made a couple more films. Then I made a film called London Fields.
Oh
This
yes.
must be so boring, I'm so
No.
sorry, I'm wangling on. London Fields, so this was the turning point. Mistake number 6. So I made this film called London Fields, and it was great. And I had Amber Heard, Billy Bob Thornton, Johnny Depp.
Wow.
Who else was in it? Cara Delevingne. I got all this cast together. Brilliant. I had £5 million or something. No money. We had never any money. The cash wasn't coming in. Every week, different finance plan. I had a director who was monster in his head. I mean, nice bloke and all, but just kept thinking, kept saying, I can do better. He was American. I'll make this. I'm Orson Welles' son. And, no, you're not. You did the one thing he ever did was Katy Perry video, the one in the helicopter in the castle.
Yeah.
And it was horrendous. And I had no producers there. The Americans didn't turn up. They kept away because they could see the problem. And I was stuck in 3 mills in East London with a bunch of people who were trying to make a film. And it was so awful an experience. We finished the film through various manipulation of crew and getting things done, and making Billy Bob Thornton second unit director for 2 weeks.
My goodness, man.
Because he understood. I mean, I sat in a room with Billy Bob. I've got to tell you this, another quick story.
Yeah.
So we sat in a room, and he sat down with the director and me, and he said to the director, "You don't know how to direct." He basically told him, "You fucking useless."
Jeez.
I sat there, and he said, "Laurie is your saviour. You haven't got a clue what you're doing." And in an American accent, I can't do it. And he started crying, the director, Matthew. Oh my God. And we were filming. We had to go, we were filming in where was it? The Mall.
Right.
And I said, guys, we have to go. Like, Billy Bob just got up and said, "You know what? We love it." And he walked out. I followed Billy. He said, "Did I do good there? Did you like what I did?" Well, Billy, he said, "Well, Laurie, he's got to know, right?" I said, "I know, but today probably wasn't the day." Did you go off and get changed and get into your gear? Went back Matthew, and Matthew said, "Laurie, why did he do that to me?" I said, "Because a lot of it is true. You know, you know how to do it, but Matthew, you've been one huge pain in the ass." So he goes out, and Matthew is, I have to say, very, very quiet, and but I just sat there, and at the end of it all, we were 2 million in debt.
Oh my gosh.
At the end of the shoot. I paid the crew everything by 1 week of shoot. How was I going to get the other 2 million? And this is all true. I spent 3 months trying to figure out with the suppliers, and they're the people that or my lighting guys, my construction people, they knew me, so that I said, I'll get you the money, and I did, but it was so awful.
Very stressful.
So actually at that point I said, I'm not doing this again.
Right.
I'm not doing this again. I can't do. I was ill, pretty much. Then I got the call to do Peaky Blinders.
And on that note, we will move to Peaky Blinders. So, Laurie joins Peaky Blinders 2014, second season you come in. How many people watch Peaky Blinders here? Oh, loads of it. I'm absolutely obsessed with Peaky Blinders. It's one of the greatest things I've seen in recent years. So how did you get involved? And was it difficult stepping into the previous producer's shoes?
You know, I like you. I had not seen it when I got the call.
Oh, right.
I had not seen it. I didn't know what it was, and I went and bought the DVD. I watched the first 3 episodes and just thought, this is amazing. I've never seen it. I knew kind of what it was. So I think what I've learned is that second seasons are always the most difficult. Because the first season is a triumph. The second is always the harder one because you've got a benchmark. So when I went to do this, I met Colin McCarthy, the director, who is just a joy. And Colin and I...
Did you bring him in again? Did you?
No,
Okay.
he kind of came via the production company.
Okay.
But we were trying to find a second director to do 3 and 3, it was 6 episodes. And Colin, we just said, let's do the whole thing, Colin. He said, yeah, let's do the whole thing. And I think what we tried to do with this season, which I do think is the best season, is just raise the bar cinematically, and I think also, but it comes from the script. Steve Knight's writing is stunning.
The script is brilliant.
I think that's the thing, like with Occupation, the script was wonderful. This script writing is amazing. I don't know how Steve does it. He writes so much stuff. And because it's set in a world that is very male, it was a joy. It was an absolute
and obviously
joy.
Killian is astonishing in it, isn't he? I mean, he really is.
He was brilliant, and Tom was amazing. I mean,
But you didn't have him for that long, did you? It was quite
6 days.
right.
I had him for 6 days, and he's quite intense, is Tom.
Because he's a method actor, isn't he? Like,
He's a method actor, and we did a few days with him. He came up on a Thursday, I think, and we shot him on a Sunday. And he came up. He brought his 2 dogs, and I remember going to the Liverpool hotel, very nice hotel. I had to beg them, please, can you let Tom and his dogs in? And they said, okay, fine. And he brought his dogs, and then he just talked for hours. He just talks and talks, and he wants to get into the character. And okay, right. Got on to set on the Sunday morning. I said to Steve, look, you have to be here, Steve, because I can see what's going to happen. They go on set. They spent the whole morning talking about the scene, actually in the caravans, in the whatever, and it went from like a 6-page to 17 pages.
Wow.
That scene down to 12, and then we shot it in the afternoon. 2 cameras either side, 2 different lenses, and that's how we did it. It was amazing, and Tom had to, because it's his first day, he wanted to dictate the character. He wanted to make sure that what was on camera was what was in his head. And Killian was so giving. I mean, he just gave so much to that.
I mean, there's a real electricity between
Yeah,
them. I mean, it's an amazing charge, energy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I haven't really seen that for a while.
Yeah.
I look and I go, I just think it's an amazing piece of filmmaking. It really is.
Talk about the filmmaking, because obviously it looks wonderful. It's very cinematic. But how did you get on with the budgetary constraints? I mean, were there certain times?
Well, I went over budget. Not much. Not much.
What's the budget for Peaky Blinders?
Well, it's 8.6 million for 6 episodes.
6 episodes.
So it's about 1 point. I can't remember what it is. About 1.7 or whatever it is.
Okay.
An hour. It's tiny, and I got calls from the States asking me, how do you do it for that kind of money? Because they spend 5 times the amount. And, you know, we do it in Liverpool with local crew. We don't pay a huge amount, to be honest. And people do it because they want to do it, including the actors. The actors don't get paid. They do now, but then they weren't getting paid huge amounts.
Yeah.
I didn't pay Tom that much.
But now it's been taken up by Netflix, I presume.
Well, now
It's
it's
a lot-
exactly. So it's suddenly blossomed into a bigger
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that got BAFTA nominated.
Yeah.
Didn't win it, and I tell you, who won it, which was, and I was there with Steve Knight at the BAFTAs. Happy Valley.
Oh yes,
We won it 2 years in a row, and Steve stood up and said, "Utter crap." He did, and he stood up and walked out. But this is in the Palladium. He just said, "I'm not." He said, "This is rubbish," and that was the end. He was furious. He went down the pub.
I quite like Happy Valley, but I prefer that.
I told him, I said, "No, Steve, stay, don't go." No, he went down the pub in the middle of the ceremony.
But were you approached for? Sorry, in terms of people like you were approached for that, because what's interesting about you, you're always approached
Yeah,
by
I'm
these
approached.
companies.
I think what I'm realising, having done films and being that independent world and being quite free with my thinking, and unfortunately, I think budgetary wise, because I'm a great believer in giving the director, and that's probably half of my problems with a few people is I'll give the director what he needs, and I think also I believe in if you haven't got the money, then you've got to cut the script. The problem is that a lot of financiers and broadcasters won't do that. No, the script, you can't cut the script. Yeah, but we can't afford to do it, but you're not cutting the script.
Well, there's a good example. Can you tell me the Titanic story? Because that's a brilliant story about Peaky Blinders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Steve, that's interesting, because Steve had written the scene. So when Annabelle Wallis appears, the blonde girl, she appears back in the show. Steve wrote a scene. The scene was the Titanic pulled into Liverpool dock, and on the dock we find this couple, and there's hundreds of people milling around, and there's people with carts and luggage and horses and whatever. Come down, the camera comes down. We don't see her. She's got a hat. She comes down. So the camera's with her. Comes through all these people through to the passport place, and there's just people everywhere. There's chaos, noise. Comes to the passport booth, and we're on the passport. Opens the passport, and we see it's Annabelle, the lady. I've forgotten her character's name. And then we pull up and we see it's Annabelle Wallis. She's back. Wow. I said, Steve, I can't do that. I can't do that. And Colm, and I said to Colm, as she said, Colm, you tell him. You do it. You tell him. Why? Anyway, so we had to go to London on 3 different occasions to have a chat with Stephen about the scripts. And that was our biggest problem. I said, I just can't. And Stephen was adamant we had to shoot it in some big way. And I said to Colm, look, the way to do this is it's a phone call, and we reveal her on a phone call, however you want to do it.
In the hotel, isn't it? Yeah.
So we came up with this plan in a hotel, which we shot in Chatsworth House, which is up in Derbyshire, in a big old stately home. Made it into a hotel room, and we just, it's a phone call off the husband, American, onto Annabelle, who turns to camera. She's back. It did exactly the same, and Stephen knew that. But Stephen didn't want to play. He wanted the big. I want the big. So it's also having the confidence as well at that point now of saying to a writer, I can't do that. Saying to the director, do it like this. How about that? And having the ability to be able to talk to these, fairly huge egos is one thing, but also, talented, massive visionary. And you've got to be able to deal with them so that I can then to do it for the money. Unfortunately, Peaky Blinders did go over the budget, about £250,000. But and that's because he came to me at the very end. We didn't have the last 2 scripts till about the last 5 weeks of shoot.
Wow!
And he did the Derby. He said, the Derby. I went, what do you mean the Derby? How do I do the Derby? I shot the Derby. That whole end sequence was shot in a car park in Manchester, and it was an old carpet warehouse. And I said, let's do it in a tent. And we put 2 big lights just to create light. And we kept turning the sets around in the tent for different parts of the Derby. And then we had horses outside, snorting. We did have a few horses come into frame.
But it works so well.
It works. It does work.
Really well.
Yeah, we did one big. We did get the money to do one big visual effects shot because we had to do it.
That's fascinating.
But Peaky's was wonderful. But it was hard. It was hard financially. It was hard.
Do you wish you could have stayed for another season, or you?
No.
Okay. Okay.
No.
All right.
No, because I felt that I also pissed off the production company.
Okay.
The problem is, it's no because you know, British television, which leads me on to the whole television, is so, you know, trying to create. We're now so used to HBO and Netflix and Amazon scale.
Yes, absolutely.
And because I've come from film, and directors love me because I will give them scale. Why were you going to do? Oh, that sounds great. Yes, of course you can't do the Titanic, but we can do something as big as, but do it with 2 people, not with 2,000. I mean, I think from doing Peakies, what did I do next? I can't remember.
We're going to move on to Black Mirror, actually, because there's lots of ties here. Obviously, a revered series, and this is where you get the Emmy, isn't it? For
well, it actually was for
San Junipero.
for San Junipero. Yeah.
So how did you get involved? Was it Charlie Brooker, who's obviously the main writer of that show? Was he involved in your involvement?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, they came to me. They came and asked me, did I want to be involved in this?
Because you did 3 episodes.
I did 3 episodes, and I think that when I read the scripts, I just thought, well, I've read San Junipero, which is what I won this for. You seen San Junipero?
How many of you have seen San Junipero? Which is, yeah.
I mean,
Which
I
is
read that
brilliant.
script, and I just said at the time, I went, this is so beautiful. It's such a
It's terribly moving.
lovely piece of writing. And we didn't, Owen and I, the director, I got Owen Harris, and we did little work to that script. But the biggest thing was, where do we shoot it? Because when we started budgeting, it's all set in America. I just said, we can't afford the States. You know, we knew we couldn't. So my plan, which worked, was let's go to South Africa, because I knew it was cheap. You get it's cheap, great weather, and you can do a lot of things there very, very well. And we ended up shooting 7 days in London, 8 days in London with a crowd, because I knew South Africa. This is true. I know that Cape Town young people do not look like. Well, they do actually look like from the 70s, 80s. They do actually, but they can't react. They don't know how to move. There's a lot of dancing in the clubs, and they just didn't get it. And I knew they wouldn't. So I did all the interiors of the club, the 80s and 90s club in London, on a set and a few other things. And then I shot the rest, all the exteriors and various in Cape Town in 17 days. And again, you know, we didn't know at the time what we were doing, but we felt this is quite special.
The response has been incredible, hasn't it?
It has. I mean, America, I mean, honestly, I was there a few times this year, and they love San Junipero. When we won this a couple of months ago, we didn't think we were going to win. We thought Robert De Niro was going to win for his thing, he did. So it was an amazing thing to get this, and
Actually, it's more impressive than the BAFTA, isn't it, in terms of statuettes?
well, I mean, it's
beautiful looking.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, because it won 2, one for writing and it won
That's
for
right.
for best TV.
What's it like to work with Charlie Brooker? Because
I mean,
he's
Charlie writes. He doesn't come to set very often. He keeps himself quite away. He came a few times. Didn't come to South Africa. Although when I saw him at the Emmys, he did say he wished he had come. He'd like to have come out. But he's very hands off. He likes to look at rushes. He gets very involved in post production.
Oh, okay, right.
So in post production, which is again what I've begun to love as a producer, I like that area.
Because in the old days, you weren't into the post production.
No, in the very beginning, I couldn't understand it. It was boring.
Yeah.
But actually, what you realise as you get older is to make making film or television. I mean, this is a film. I mean, Joe Wright directed that. He's just done Darkest Hour. I mean, Joe is brilliant.
He's not an easy director to work with.
No, Joe is not easy. He's very. He's got his mindset, and you'll do it his way.
Yeah.
And my job actually on Nosedive was, Joe, I can give you most of it. I can't give you everything, but we'll get you there.
I mean, how many days do you have to shoot?
22.
Okay.
And when I first met Joe, he told me I need 22 days. I had 17, and I said to my financiers, I need the 22 days, because whatever happens, you'll end up at 22. So either now we have the 5, and we can sit there and go, you know, and every day I'll be giving you bad news and say he's not completing schedule, he's not doing it, or we just go for it. So we went for it, and actually came under budget, which is a first for me.
And
Which is true.
And you know, on that note, we're going to stop it there because I've got to open up to the audience. But can we thank Laurie for brilliant? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we'll go for the next sort of 10-15 minutes. This is your opportunity to ask Laurie any questions. Unfortunately, I haven't spoken about gunpowder and Kit Harington, but it's up to you. So, away we go. Who would like to ask a question? No one. Oh, Michael.
Michael does. Michael does.
Laurie, tell us about gunpowder and what it was like.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Wait, I've got a load of mates out there. They can ask me
Where are your
questions.
friends?
Yeah, they can ask me questions. My wife will ask me a question. Where's your wife? Michelle, I'll ask a question today. Gunpowder. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
of
shame
course.
to leave it off.
Yeah,
but
of
as
course.
it's-
Who has seen Gunpowder? How many of you have seen Gunpowder? Oh, a few of you. Okay.
Did we like it?
Did we like it? Because when we had this conversation, what's interesting about Gunpowder? Seems to be very influenced by Witchfinder General, which is a
Yeah.
terrific film from the late 60s.
Yeah, absolutely.
But-
I think, Gunpowder. So after having done Black Mirror, I then read Gunpowder, and I read the first draft episode, and just thought it was brilliant. And Roland Bennett is an extraordinary writer, who
Very colourful past. Isn't
very colourful past, very intellectual, very cerebral. Not like me. I mean, complete opposite to me, and just a lovely man to be around. And perfect for writing Gunpowder because he was very much an anarchist. He was very much involved in politics in the bad old days of the IRA. But a brilliant writer. And I read the script. I said, let's do it. When I went when I got involved, I was told we're going to get American finance with the BBC, whether it be Netflix or HBO or whatever. That never materialised because of Kit Harington being basically his HBO property.
Jon Snow, isn't it? From Game of
Jon
Thrones.
Snow, yeah, and they wouldn't give us the money. Basically, we ended up with BBC only with money coming from the parent company of the production company. So we were a lot less. I was £800,000 less
Oh gosh.
than what I was told. So to make a 1600 period project, a 3-hour film effectively, for at the end ended up at £6 million, was very tough because we had, and at the end actually what I ended up doing was building a lot of sets, regurgitating sets over an 8-week period up in Bradford. We went up to Bradford, and it was tough. It was so tough. But I have to say, it's one of the best things I've done in a long time. I'm so proud of it. Notwithstanding that the production company, again, this is the problem of being a producer for hire, because you're expected to, but you mustn't spend more than what's here. Yeah, but the problem is, you see, you're the production company. The problem is, you've got here 1600, and you've got people being executed, and people blowing things up, and horses, and period costume, and muskets, and you're giving me the budget that you shoot 2 people sitting in an office, and I swear that's what they think. Yeah, but why can't you do it for the... Yeah, because it doesn't work like that. So period filmmaking, which is kind of what I specialise in, I guess, because they're all period. These shows are period for me. You have to really fight your corner. So as a producer, I'm fighting. What I've learned over the last sort of 40 years, I guess, is I've learned not to be so nice. I have learned that, Michelle. She knows that. Not to be so nice, but to be fair and to be... I think it's also just... There are a lot of people in the film industry, television film, who aren't very nice, I have to be honest. I think their ego gets in the way. They don't care about people. They care about the end product. They care about the money at the end. And I know it's in every walk of life, I get that. But I think the fact that filmmaking is about people, we need people to do it. You can't, without the people, the writers, the actors, the tea-making boy or girl, you need all these people to do it. And that's why it's such a wonderful industry, because it will never go away. I mean, robots are never going to be able to...
Well, this is Black Mirror.
Well, I do know that I know now. Apparently, there's a great software that they're making all the actors like Malcolm Douglas and Sylvester look like they're 25.
I know, that is incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So they're just acting and then they're doing their heads.
Yeah.
I want one of them.
Well, thank you, Michael. Another question? Yes. Yes.
When these people finish their degrees,
Yeah.
what tips can you give them to help them get into the industry?
Yeah, no. I see a lot of young boys and girls who want to get into the industry. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think it is who you know. I mean, that's the first thing. Unfortunately, now you know.
They all need a man in
They
the
all
army,
know
don't
me
they?
now, don't they? Yeah. I think it's who you know. I think it really depends on obviously what you want to do. I think if you want to be a screenwriter, which I think is I'm so it was the admiration for screenwriting is enormous over the last sort of 25 years, having worked with great ones. But that's an area that I go, I have no idea. It's like a minefield to me. I think if you're going to be a producer, honestly at this point I would not do what I did. What I did was 40 years ago. It was like a time when people used to wear clog boots and kind of funny little hats. And, do you know what I mean? It was like a world that doesn't exist anymore. I think now as a producer to make your own films, I remember actually a good piece of advice. Nick Powell, who I worked with at Scala and then run the National Film School, he was the big cheese there. Nick always used to say to me, you know what, you're not being a producer, is you got to have no money, wear really scruffy clothes, and hang around the Groucho and Soho House. Literally, that's what we used to do. We had no money, and we used to, scruffy, that was always normal, and just hang and meet people, and just get to meet people. And I think, more importantly, it's about the material. I think to be a producer, you've got to have the IP, as they call it. And that's what I've learned. That's my number 7 or 8, whatever. I've never had, and I think it's more to do with, I suppose, because I've come from a different way. If I was doing it again, I wouldn't do that. I would be a producer that got the material, said this is going to be, I've got this great story, I'm going to make this work and have a vision for it and make it happen. And I think that's, as a producer, and for directors, to be honest, I think that's, I'm not really answering your question, I'm sorry, but because it is hard, it's such a, I've got mates that have gone to LA and they've just ended up on their feet, they've gone to work at studios, the people have gone off to do, actors, I think it's, any actors in here? Any actors?
Oh, loads of actors. Half the room are actors. Wow. That's brilliant.
Actors.
Be nice, Laurie.
Yeah,
Be nice.
I think it's the hard. I mean, how you do it, I don't know. I don't know how you can do what you're. I'm in such awe of it. I'm scared of actors. I'll be honest.
Can you tell them the story very quickly about how you became unscared of actors?
The unscared of actors. It's true. I mean, when I was doing Sense and Sensibility, I was always I was shy. I was quite shy. And used to do my job and go off and whatever. And I meet Hugh, go, hey, Hugh. It's Hugh, It was one of them. And James Shamer said to me, listen, you're going to have to stop doing that. You have to talk to actors. Do I have to? Okay. Because I thought my job was to do the toilets and the transport and figure out the plan. Don't talk to actors, waffle. So I had to go for dinner that night in a hotel. And there was Hugh and Emma and Kate. I mean, I know this sounds so pompous, but it's not. They were there. And it was James and Ang. And James said, listen, I've got all you here to honour Laurie. And they all went, oh, great. And they went, oh, Laurie, oh, this. So I went, wow, what are you doing this? Why? Because they said, without you, nothing happens. Really? Oh. And then I had to then start talking to the Laurie's and Hugh Grants, whatever. And it changed my perception of actors. Because I then understood, actually, they're just normal people. I mean, they're just kind of they're scared. I mean, genuinely, I think most actors are scared. I mean, when you talked about Tom Hardy, I mean, Tom spent 2 days just talking about his character because he was nervous. He was scared of what he was going to be doing. And I think if you look at Cillian, or in fact any actor, I mean, they've got to understand what the character is, but also have such confidence to be able to deliver. I mean, I'm in awe of great acting. I think I mean, the thing about filmmaking as well, of course, as against theatre, it's the moment.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your 10 minutes.
Yes, yeah.
You've got to get it in the can
Yeah,
and then move on. And directors, that's why directors are so wonderful, the good ones.
yeah.
That ability, like what Joe can do and Owen, to pull in that moment, know when they've got it.
Absolutely.
Because they're thinking about they think about the editing,
Yeah.
you know.
Should we have another?
I really didn't answer that question well, did I? I'm sorry.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Another question for Laurie? Let's have one more question. Yes, sir.
I'm
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Ed.
hello.
Hello.
I'm deconstructing Sanji Lapero for my 3rd year directing module, and I just wondered, do you have any advice of like making it as authentic as possible? Because obviously myself and my cast are all like 20. Like we didn't experience the 1980s.
Laurie just said, what does that mean?
Sorry.
It's 1987, isn't it? It's,
Yeah.
So
What does deconstructing mean? I don't.
he doesn't know what deconstructing
Basically,
means.
so like I'm taking the episode and making like my own sort of I'm adapting it to make it my own piece.
Okay.
Ah.
That's so cool. Well, what do you want me to? Sorry. What's the question?
How can I make it like authentic, like the styles and themes, rather than it just being like a 20-year-old thinking, oh, this is such a like romanticising the kind of nostalgia of it.
Right.
We didn't go through it.
So you're recreating the 80s again, are you? Oh, okay. Well, she wants to recapture the authenticity of it, but she didn't live through that period. So obviously,
On
people
film.
Yeah, because people have made it obviously lived through the 80s. She's obviously far too young. She didn't live
Yeah.
through the 80s.
But you're actually going to shoot it. Are you going to shoot your own
It's like a
version?
stage thing, it's a 20-minute piece.
Ah, right,
I
stage. Okay.
see. I'm sorry, I missed that bit. Oh, that's so cool. I don't really know what the answer is. I'm really sorry. It's so cool though. We can talk about it in a minute actually.
Yeah. Should we do? Yeah, we'll do.
I need to think about that.
Okay. Another. Well, let's have one more question. One more question, then we'll let you.
Oh, there's more
Yes,
though,
sir.
isn't there?
So, yeah.
Hiya.
Hiya.
Having worked with like kind of big old studios like Paramount, and then having worked with Netflix, do you find that there's any difference between them? Do they have different expectations, or are they much the same?
Completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely different. Actually, that's a good point because actually the whole Paramount was feature was a big thing. It was run by dinosaurs. I'll be honest. In the early 2000s, and now that Netflix and the HBOs, well, HBO and Netflix are very different in the way that they deal with filmmakers. I mean, HBO are much more. How can I put it? They're I'm going to say this. Their material is very clear what they want. They're very sort of they look at the product as class. It has to be a great script. It may not work actually on screen, but what they do is make sure that it is absolutely the best. Netflix, because it's a different commodity, because they've got to churn it out onto their service,
Yeah.
they will just churn out so much stuff, and they come at it in a very different way. So HBO are much more like that. Craftsman, HBO. I love working with HBO because they care about. Netflix care, but Netflix are like, you know what? If it works or doesn't work, it doesn't matter because people are paying the subscription.
Absolutely.
HBO, it is much more. You pay to watch that film. You know, so it's a slightly different, and they are both brilliant to work with. They just come at it in a very different way, as against the Paramounts and the Weinsteins of 2000, whereby it was just money and it was pretty horrible people, and people who just basically now you realise should never have been in that job. But Hollywood is a funny old place, you know, funny old place. It really is.
And on that note, we will end it there. Can we thank Laurie for being absolutely